It's often tricky balancing growth of team and business between burn rate or funding growth through profit. How do you make these decisions as you scale your companies, balancing growth of team and business?
Yeah, absolutely. I've definitely made mistakes along the way. Maybe I'll talk about that first. That's probably what people want to hear, right? We had a company, Motion CX, that we still were able to exit, but we definitely overhired. And what had happened was we had a major telecom public company make a commitment to us to do a co-sell, and it was a big brand that's recognizable, and we got a little too excited that we had, gee, that was the product market fit, that was them validating that we were ready to get going, and so we geared up the team to support that, and but we should have waited until we understood their timing and their ability to execute, right? So just because they greenlit it at the CEO level and the CRO level doesn't mean that they have the ability to execute internally, right? And so we had months of meetings with very little traction, and it was non-obvious things. It was not that they didn't want to sell the product; it was that they didn't have the internal processes to support the accounting behind it, and it was a public company, and so there were checks and balances that they had to go through, and we underestimated the level of effort it would take to actually ramp that up, and so we figured we would gear up and solve more of the technical problems and get ahead on that, and we solved some really interesting problems for sure, and we had other customers as well, but the cash flow that just didn't align with the spend and the burn rate because of that, and we could have continued to invest, by the time that we got there, we actually had a little bit of a problem too. COVID at the time had accelerated the market spend in our space, and so being in the unified communication space and call center space, companies like Zoom, for instance, did really well. Right? We all know that, right? Well, that was the same customer base we were going after in a lot of ways, and so the buying cycle was accelerated. So there was a bit of a dry cycle that happened at a time there. So with that, that's one of my bigger lessons, because it did result in us having to do layoffs, unfortunately. And these people that we'd worked with in the past, actually, at Call Copy. We saw it coming, so I feel as though we did the best we could with giving plenty of notice and good packages and things like that. But it still was some of the toughest days in my career for sure. And so I think the big lesson there was I should have followed my gut and not overhired before the customer validation was proven through cash flow. And it's very hard to get out of a burn rate that's too high, if you will, without really tough decisions. When instead you can be a little more purposeful up front and do some bootstrapping type techniques to get to that validation and cash flow that's driven by it first. So that's always the thing that stands out to me when I kind of think back on some of those lessons, if you will.